It's 30 minutes past the hour of 8 a.m. and welcome to this special edition of Inside Oakwood with Dr. Leslie Pollard. He's joined today with Dr. Martin Hodnett, Oakwood University professor and department chair of psychological sciences. Also, Grace Arnold, Oakwood University Health Services counselor. This month is Mental Health Month, so we're going to be discussing mental health during this special edition of Inside Oakwood University. And welcome to this special edition, Dr. Pollard, and good morning to you.
Welcome, Donna. Welcome. I am glad to be here this morning. How are you feeling on this triumphant Thursday?
I am feeling like a winner, as
Same
usual.
Here. Same here, all the time.
That's right. Yes, God is good. And so we continue to just, today we're talking about working on our fruits of the Spirit. So we can be more of a winner for Christ today.
Okay,
showing
Galatians
that love.
5.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Love, joy, peace, long-suffering,
Yes.
gentleness, goodness, faith.
Yes.
Meekness, temperance.
That's right.
Against such there is no law.
Right.
Yeah, Galatians 5. Yeah. That's true. And we all need to perfect and cultivate those because those graces make a difference in relationships, make a difference in our home, in our workplace.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Even in mental health, right?
Even in mental health, absolutely. Peace is one of those fruits.
Exactly.
Peace is one of those
Joy
fruits.
and kindness and patience and all of that.
It is.
But you got a word for us today?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What flashed to mind today was the old Negro spiritual that used to be sung by the early Breath of Life Quartet called "You Better Mind."
Yes,
you
like
better
one.
mind. You better mind how you walk,
yes.
what you're talking about. You better mind. You better mind. I remember one time we were on a cruise. We do a Biblical Foundations cruise, which one of our guests, Dr. Hodnett, has certainly been on. We do a Biblical Foundations cruise. And one day we were leaving for an excursion, but coming back, there was a sign as I was walking up the galley, and I hadn't heard this language in a long time. It was very British almost.
Okay.
It said, mind your head.
Oh.
That was a sign.
Mind
you ever
your
heard that?
head.
Mind your head.
Uh-huh.
Mind your head.
Okay.
And it took me back to the older people in Louisiana and New Orleans who used to say, boy, you better mind.
Yes.
You're right.
Yes.
You better mind what you're talking about. Mind. There's a writer by the name of Donald Gray Barnhouse who's a scholar, and he wrote a book called The Invisible War. And basically his argument is that the whole plan of salvation, the fight in salvation, is the battle for the mind. It's a battle for the mind. And in the last days, the mind, that little territory between your ears, that's the battlefield.
Wow.
It's about
Yes,
a 4-inch by 3-inch. Well, if you got a big head,
it might be a little larger.
Yeah, right. I got a big head, so it's
I
probably
wasn't
a bigger
gonna say that. I
battlefield.
wasn't gonna say that.
So I got a big head. Okay, but it's that's the battlefield, the mind, what we think and what we talk about, and what enters our mind. Now, before the coronavirus, Americans used to watch on an average of 7 hours and 22 minutes of television a day. And that was before the virus.
How many hours?
7 hours, and 22 minutes.
22 minutes, okay.
On the average. That's on the average. Now, that means some were more and some were less. And probably now with the virus, it's probably even more. But one of the dangers of watching so much television is not so much the content, although it is the content of many narratives we need to be concerned about, but it's also the commercials that prey upon our inadequacies and our weaknesses. Ladies, you'll remember this one that used to come on some while ago. They would show a lady's hand and they'd say, those ugly age spots.
Oh, man, yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're trying to sell you something, right? And then they sell you this cream or whatever. So we have to guard our mind. And this takes us to Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. Where the apostle says, and I want to read it, he says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yes.
So that's what God is doing in his children. He's actually, every day, he's renewing our mind, the way we think, the way we talk, the way we look at the world, the way we make decisions, the values we embrace.
Right.
All of that is tied up with the mind.
Yes.
Right? So today we are focusing during Mental Health Month on preserving the mind, how to achieve, how to cultivate, how to embrace the notion of mental health, the experience of mental health, and the peace that it brings to us, right? And so we have two experts today who are with us. One, Dr. Martin Hodnett. He's an Oakwood University professor and department chair of psychological sciences. And then we have Miss Grace Arnold, who I've done this work with before on Oakwood Praise.
All right,
she's
now.
with us today. She's a counselor in Oakwood University Health Services.
Yes.
And we welcome both of them today as we talk about mental health.
All right, so where do we want to start? Start with Dr. Hodnett?
Yeah, let's start
Okay.
with Dr. Hodnett. Dr. Hodnett, good morning. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Dr. Hodnett, I have a question for you. It's at first it sounds a little bit academic, but it actually works its way out in a very practical, clinical application of the services that so many counselors offer. And it's this question: does it matter? Many people are afraid of mental health. They're afraid of mental health counselors. They're afraid of all of that. Does it matter? Does the worldview, and you can define that, we give you an opportunity to define what that means. Does the worldview of the counselor actually matter when we are selecting counselors? And if so, what is the significance of that, of how it matters?
Okay, that's a very good question, and it's really relevant to how we consider choosing and selecting a therapist. I know if you can think of a worldview as how you basically look at things, how you look at problems, how you look at people, and understanding that how people see the world and even see you, often as a person of color or as a woman or as a man or whoever you present as, that matters. So as you're choosing therapist, as you're looking, if you're considering, pursuing therapy, it's always important to look at what type of not only worldview they have. Is it Christian? Is it atheist? But also looking at what are the theoretical orientations that they're operating from? What are the suppositions? What are the foundational elements that support how they build a diagnosis and understand what you're dealing with and what you're coming to the table with? To the extent that they're able to understand that, they will be better able then to assist and help you through the therapeutic process. But if they have a worldview that is counter to your own, that can be somewhat difficult. Now, most therapists will tell you that they've been trained to work from a perspective of the patient or the client and to understand their problems from their particular perspective. But we're human. And the reality is, to the extent that we can try to put off our worldview, only goes so far. And so I think in understanding that, we have to recognize that when we're selecting a therapist or trying to find mental health resources, that we need to be aware of, to the extent that we can at least, where a person is coming from and how they are interpreting our own issues or concerns that we may have.
Now, Ms. Grace, Ms. Arnold, did you want to respond to that as well?
Yeah, and thanks for having me on this morning.
Absolutely.
And treatment is a partnership that can only be successful with mutual respect. And for this to occur, it remains the duty of the therapist to become culturally competent and sensitive to disparities, and in turn communicate support and understanding to the patient, and to completely eliminate mental health disparities. Clinicians must be willing to undertake an honest self-examination of their conscious and unconscious attitudes about race and so forth.
Wow.
So is it really easy, though, to do that? I understand that I want to be in front of somebody who believes in my standards and my beliefs and all that, and take me down the road that I want to go and that I think, was best for me. But how do I actually find that person? Is that really realistic in this world that we live in right now?
Oh, well, therapists, counselors, psychologists, they have their profiles up on Psychology Today, or you can go and see who best fits you.
Okay.
And just like when you go to a medical doctor, if your medical doctor does not fit you, you change the doctor and go somewhere else that fits you, because remember, it's a partnership.
Right.
I can't unveil and expose myself to somebody that I don't feel comfortable with.
Right.
So if it's a partnership, then can I just invoke one of those biblical phrases? So if it's a partnership, then, Miss Arnold, we can actually be unequally yoked at times.
yeah.
Easily,
Definitely.
right? So
Definitely.
if I believe that, I'm going to use as an example, if I believe, my belief structure is, regardless of what I do, that marital fidelity is an important part of a marriage. But the counselor, Dr. Hodnett, doesn't believe that. They think those are individual choices, and adults make choices. Just understand choices have consequences. Well, that's true too.
Yes.
But the value that I hold, Dr. Hodnett, you want to comment on that? And then we want to talk about the stigma that often in the African American community keeps us from doing any of this.
Yes.
But Dr. Hodnett, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, I would just say that ultimately a competent therapist would try to enter into the perspective of the client to understand how they formulate their value system, their priorities, and understand what is important to them. I can't say that always takes place, but I think to the extent that they respect your value system is key and vital. And to the extent that they don't, it can present problems and issues moving forward.
Wow. So then as we are in this pandemic, right in smack in the middle of it, and hoping we are at the end of it, I'm sure that there are some types of mental illnesses that are more prevalent than others. And a lot of us might be dealing with it, but there's a stigma. As Dr. Pollard said, we don't want to go, we don't want to say. So tell us about the stigma associated with getting mental health support and care, especially in the Black community.
Well, I think typically many people within the African American community draw on a history and a understanding that they have, as a people, have been through much historically within this country, and as a result, they are strong, and oftentimes they may try to use those strengths to say that they can make it through difficulties that they face. For many of us who have family members who have lived through racial discrimination, Jim Crow South, or other things within the history, we may find it difficult then to justify having difficulties emotionally with regard to depression or anxiety, and thinking, well, we just need to pull up ourselves by our own bootstraps. Our forefathers were able to go through much worse, and they didn't have therapy, so we should be able to do it as well.
Right. That's so true.
Powerful.
And the reality is, if we're really honest, they may have made it, but it was by God's grace.
Yes.
And it wasn't without scars.
Right.
And so as we continue to move forward, we want to do better, not only for ourselves, but also for our loved ones and for those who are coming up behind us. And one of the things that we can do is to encourage the education of understanding that it's okay to seek mental help. It's okay to go to a counselor or a therapist. I know within the religious community, within the African American community, oftentimes we'll have a strong religious bent to try to utilize cultural coping mechanisms or religious coping mechanisms. And while it's great to pray for challenges and issues that you have, and it may even be great to go to a leader of your faith, let's say to a pastor or a reverend, it's something different to go to a therapist who can not just give you biblical advice or advice from a perspective of wisdom, but to delve into deep-seated issues, family history, understanding, what influences that you've experienced are actually playing themselves out in your lives and what things you might want to be aware of that you are doing as a parent. So I think ultimately a lot of this is historical, but I think with increased education, we can move forward and decrease the stigma and embrace therapy, mental health treatment in its various forms.
So that was the second part of my question. I know my question had two parts in it. So the first part was dealing with the different types of mental illness that may be coming about more and being more prevalent during the pandemic. Can Miss Grace, Miss Arnold, I don't know why I keep saying Miss Grace.
That's fine. That's fine.
Can you
She answers
respond
to
that?
both.
Yes,
She
yes,
answers
yes.
to both.
So because of the fear,
Yeah.
we're going to have increase in anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Could you say those slowly, Grace? Because I am sure there are listeners right now who may not have handles
Yes.
for what they're feeling, but you're
Right.
giving us handles. Could you say those slowly, please?
So anxiety coming from a lot of fear. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, because of the trauma that we're experiencing on a daily basis. We're losing loved ones, whether personally or vicariously. So all of this, it's causing an increase in, and the isolation
Right.
is also contributing to that.
Wow. So how do we, if we listen to Dr. Hodnett and we know the history of why African Americans may not be seeking it, how do we get to the point where we say, okay, I need to get some help?
So
Hard
as Dr.
question. Yeah.
As Dr. Hodnett says, education.
Yeah.
And so we have to flood the media with it's okay. It's okay to open up. It's okay to say that it's okay to say how you're feeling.
Right.
As Dr. Hodnett said, historically, mental illness was looked upon as a sign of weakness because we are resilient people. You know, we persevere through so much. Why is it at this stage that I would open up and tell somebody what's going on with me? Why would I air my dirty laundry?
Okay. Yeah.
And because
Yeah.
we're
That's
told
how-
not to do that
Right,
as,
right.
as a people.
Yeah, I gotta
Right.
mind my own business. Keep my business
My
To myself,
business to
because
myself.
you got more worries. You don't need to be worrying about my worries, right? So I'm gonna keep mine to myself.
Yeah,
too,
yeah, yeah.
You
Got to
know?
keep people out of my business.
Exactly.
Out of my business. May I ask you a question? And I want to make it a little bit personal. Can I do that?
Yes.
So for the first time in a long time, so I'm starting to feel it again.
Uh-oh.
So I watched the gentleman who was killed over the weekend
Oh gosh, I can't.
and the kneeling
Can't.
on his neck. And tears welled up in my eyes. And I was trying to get in touch with how I was feeling about it. And the best word is fatigue. I'm just tired.
Yeah.
It's been so long.
Yeah, so
and
many.
it's been such a hard struggle. And to watch him die like that. The only word I had, Dr. Hodnett, was I just felt weary. That was my experience. Now, other people felt different. Anger,
Yes.
rage.
Yes.
I just felt weary and asked myself, how long do we have to bear up
Right.
under this?
Right.
What would you say, Dr. Hodnett, to persons like me and others who
Yeah.
are living through not only the virus,
Yeah.
but now we're watching one of our black men.
Again.
Yeah. Again. I mean, we just
Again.
had another one
Again.
in Armand.
Here we are again. Doc, what would you say to us? And how can healthy mental health perspectives help us to survive and even
How do
thrive?
we deal with that?
Yeah,
How do we
Doc.
push through?
Yeah, I can relate. I've gotten to the point where I can only watch so much of that. And I have to really, in some ways, just guard what I see with regard to that, just because it can be overwhelming. And you know, we would like to believe that we're in a place where justice prevails. But when you continue to see your black brothers and sometimes sisters as well killed, it can be very overwhelming. So I think as we look at these kinds of things as they come up, I think it's important to be very vocal about them and not try to isolate and not necessarily share what we're feeling, but to be able to talk about how this really it's a reoccurring traumatic event,
Right.
and we feel it within the community. It's not just something that's isolated, but to be able to talk about it, to be able to, as you mentioned, get in touch with how you're feeling about it, and to be able to express that, and to be able to deal with that versus to hold it in, I think is so key.
Wow.
But then also to be able to, sometimes we need to feel like we're doing something about it.
Yes.
So in finding ways to raise your voice, to mobilize, to engage in action, to speak out against the injustices that we see have long been a part of a way that we as a people have dealt with some of the things that we've seen. I think, these kinds of things, when they do occur, can be difficult also because if we're already dealing with emotional challenges, this is one more brick, if you will, pulled out from the building, if you will, at the base. And so in order to be able to bear these things, we have to be in a strong place emotionally such that we are able to bear some of these additional things. They say it's not the load that gets you, it's how you carry the load. And so to the extent that we can find appropriate and healthy means of dealing with our emotions, our challenges, that's really the key forward in terms of being able to weather this. And let's be honest, we're being asked to deal with and understand and take in something that's very abnormal. I think that's something that we shouldn't overlook, is that we're looking at something that is abnormal. It should not be happening. And to say otherwise denies our own humanity and our own sense of morality. And I think to be honest, to be true, to be authentic is key to being able to have a mental balance and wholeness and wellness.
Well, we know that the students are going to be coming back on campus, and they're going to be dealing with these types of issues when they come on campus with the injustices that they've seen while they've been away. And now with the COVID-19, some are coming back and they've lost loved ones. So what is on campus to help our students deal with these issues as they return, get prepared to return?
So as the students return, we are putting in place what we call mental health check-in times, where we go to the dorms, we do just chit-chat with our students to see what's going on, just like an open forum to see where their mental health status, what their mental health status is. Fortunately for us, just before the students left, we trained all our deans or resident assistants and or night monitors on mental health first aid. And mental health first aid is like the first aid, the regular first aid, where we teach individuals how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental illness or substance use disorder, and how to appropriately refer them. So we trained over more than 50 of our resident assistants and deans.
So there's somebody right in their dormitories that will be able to assist them if there's something that comes up or they have something they need to talk about. So we want to talk about how we're going to continue to help them along the way throughout the year. So that's when they come in, right?
Yes.
So throughout the year, because it's going to be it's going to be so new. It's going to be so different. I mean, that's enough to make you depressed right there. Just knowing you're coming. Come on now, you're coming back to school. You're going to be social distancing. You don't even know how your classroom is going to look.
Everything will change. Everything will change.
What are we going to be doing throughout the year to help with that as well?
But I'm grateful for the work that our health services has done, though, by training in mental health first aid. That's one of the resources that we have. We had a meeting last night, Donna, with the parents from the DMV area. And one of their first questions was, how are you going to handle, how's the campus going to look and what's going to happen? So we want to say to those parents that we will put in every protocol that protects safety and that minimizes risk. However, we are also equally committed to the mental health of our students. Coronavirus could naturally cause us to focus on the physical disease. But the mental response, Dr. Hodnett, that comes after that the way people are processing. Think about the number of deaths that students have experienced.
Right.
Their friends, their loved
Exactly.
ones.
They're
At this
dealing
point
with
in
grief.
in the pandemic, all of us know people who have died at this point.
Right.
I know a number of people personally who have died. So there's the mental support that's needed. So we have health ambassadors on the physical health from Healthy Campus, but we also have those mental health student ambassadors who are also doing this kind of work to help us and to help our student body communicate, manage. Also, our employees too will have challenges.
Right.
I mean, it's just everything will change. Dr. Hodnett, question for you around the issues of mental health in the African American community. Are there reasons that there's often a misdiagnosis in the African American community around mental health? Seems like just like we experience disproportionate health outcomes. Is it true? Maybe it's not true that we have a disproportionate misdiagnosis, negative diagnoses. I don't know.
Racial
I don't know what the right
diagnosis?
language is. Are there disparities in diagnoses for African American subjects when they present?
Yes, there's absolutely disparities. One of the things we know is that within the American population, only 25% of African Americans seek treatment for mental health issues compared to 40% of individuals. And one of the reasons for that is misdiagnosis by doctors. And so understanding that in some cases how we present different symptoms, particularly for men, for example, let's say a man is depressed. Well, he may not necessarily present it in the typical way that we would think of depression in terms of just in terms of his mood. He might actually appear angry.
Right.
And
But
so
he's
if
depressed.
you are looking for him to present in the typical way of someone who has depressed mood or low energy and some other things, you're going to miss it. And so understanding how we actually are presenting is key. But then also, and we kind of alluded to this earlier, is the issue of cultural competency, as Mrs. Arnold just mentioned, in terms of being able to go to a therapist who actually can understand your particular worldview and understand how you see things, and understand that you being angry about something, let's say like police brutality or murders within the community, is not something that is abnormal.
Right.
And be able to understand your particular worldview and your perspective. So I think that's key. Now, one of the challenges we have with that is that we find that there is a smaller degree of mental health providers that are African American or Caribbean American. We know that within the U.S., only about 6.2% of psychologists are African American. And so there is a need for more individuals to be trained in mental health such that we can be able to have more options in choosing someone who can actually understand where we're coming from when we're selecting therapists.
Wow. That's
Wow,
deep.
that's powerful. Miss Arnold, as we get ready to close, what are some of the things that we can do to preserve or sustain, nurture our own mental health? 2 or 3 quick things that listeners can do.
Okay. Exercise, appropriate sleep, and surround yourself with positive people.
Amen.
That might be hard. It's a bit if you're still isolating, you know.
Surround yourself with positive
people.
Oh, I
Now,
believe
what
in
if
positive
that.
or
I believe in
positive?
that. Oh my
I
goodness,
think it's
believe in
a
that.
valid question though. What if we are inside with somebody that's not positive? How do we do?
Positive, positive technology.
I like that. I like that.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yes,
there's
you gotta-
positivity somewhere. Find it. I think that's your
Find
point.
it, yes.
All right, Dr. Pollard, it's been great talking with you.
It has.
Any final comments you
Well,
want to
of
make
course,
about today?
again, I thank these mental health professionals for the ministry that they perform on the Oakwood campus, both Dr. Hodnett and Ms. Arnold. And thank you so much for what you do for so many of our young
Yes.
people and our employees.
Yeah.
And may God bless you. And again, we're very grateful that the same God who gave the medicines also gave the insights.
Yes.
You know,
amen.
same God, right? Same
Right,
God.
same God.
So this
Hallelujah.
knowledge is useful, and we hope that we've done something today to advance the cause of mental
Yeah,
health
we hope
among
so.
our population.
We hope so. And thanks for joining us for this special edition of Inside Oakwood with Dr. Leslie Pollard. We'll see you on
Monday.
We'll see you
Caught
on
me off guard.
Monday.
Monday.
We'll see you
Monday.
on Monday for another special edition of Inside Oakwood with Dr. Leslie Pollard. Thanks for joining us.
WJOU Huntsville, 90.1 FM, a broadcast service of Oakwood University.